What if I told you that one ordinary evening could quietly decide the rest of your life? Would you believe me? 3 years ago, I was standing alone in a dark room, staring at my own reflection in the mirror when it hit me. I was living a life I didn't even recognize anymore. On paper, everything looked fine. My job was okay. The income wasn't terrible. My friends would have told you I was doing just great. But the moment I turned my phone off, what was left was this heavy emptiness, this deep exhaustion, and one question echoing in my head. Where am I actually running to and what for? That night, because of one unexpected phone call, because of one sentence that sounded so casual, so harmless, I made a decision that even I thought was completely crazy at the time. I had no idea that decision would unleash a storm in my life. I almost lost everything I thought I needed to hold on to. I was forced to face the deepest fears I've been avoiding for years. And then, slowly, I had to rebuild from almost nothing. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through that entire journey. How I hit rock bottom. How I stumbled onto a tiny pivot point that quietly changed my direction, and the 3 lessons I wish I had learned years earlier because they would have saved me so much pain. And as you listen, I want you to quietly ask yourself, is there a part of my story where you see a very familiar version of you? The version that still smiles at everyone, still says, I'm fine, but inside is exhausted and running on fumes. If right now you feel like you're standing at a crossroads, like one more wrong step could push your life somewhere you never wanted to go, then stay with me until the end of the video. Because later on, I'm going to show you the exact moment everything turned around. Not because of luck, not because of natural talent, but because of one small habit that any one of us can start today, no matter where we are starting from. Why a 57-year-old American man decided to live like an Okinawan for 60 days. The main character of our story today isn't a celebrity, isn't an athlete, and definitely isn't a wellness guru. He's a 57-year-old American man from a quiet suburb. Let's call him Mark. Most of his mornings probably look a lot like someone you know. The alarm goes off 3 times before he finally gets out of bed. His head feels a little foggy. His lower back aches, and his knees complain every time he walks down the stairs. On the kitchen counter sits a familiar lineup. Blood pressure meds, cholesterol pills, a couple of random supplements he bought because an ad said they were good for heart health. He still goes to work, still drives, still waves at his neighbors with a smile. But deep down, Mark knows something. He's getting weaker faster than he'd like to admit. At his regular checkup, his doctor looks over the lab results, pauses, and says in a calm but heavy voice, Mark, if you don't change anything in the next few years, we're going to have to talk about some serious complications. Heart, joints, blood, sugar, you're running out of room. Push this. That night, Mark comes home and turns on the TV, hoping to drown out that conversation. Instead, a documentary about Okinawa fills the screen, a place where men and women in their 80s and 90s are still shopping, still gardening, still walking hills, like aging is just a number. An 89-year-old man bends down to tie his shoes without holding on to anything. A 92-year-old woman walks up a long slope with a basket of vegetables in her hand. Mark just sits there, frozen. One painful question drops into his mind. How are they 89 and 92 moving like that? And I'm 57, out of breath, just climbing the stairs. A few days later, at dinner, his daughter brings up Okinawa again, this time as one of the famous blue zones, places where people live longer, with far fewer chronic diseases. Half joking, half serious. She says, "Dad, why don't you try living like an Okinawan for a while? Eat like them, move like them, slow down like them, just for a bit." That idea sticks. Mark knows he can't just drop everything and move to Japan. But could he bring a little bit of Okinawa into his small American house? That night, he opens his laptop and falls into a rabbit hole of articles and videos about how Okinawans eat, move, rest, connect, and about this idea of Ikigai, reason to get out of bed in the morning. The more he reads, the more he realizes his problem isn't just the numbers on his lab report. It's the way he's been living for years. Rushed, isolated, stressed, and starving for simple joy. Finally, he grabs a sticky note, writes one short line, and slaps it onto the fridge. 60 days. Live like an Okinawan. 60 days. Not as a social media stunt. Not as a challenge to impress anyone, but as a quiet promise to himself. If I don't try to live differently now, there may not be a later try. For those 60 days, Mark decides to change 3 things: the way he eats, the way he moves, and the way he connects with people. No dramatic, overnight transformation. Just small, almost boring choices that most people would shrug off. A warm bowl of soup in the morning instead of a rushed, sugary breakfast. A short walk instead of collapsing straight into the couch. An evening spent talking with a neighbor instead of zoning out in front of the TV. The first lesson Mark learns, and it's a big one, is this: you don't always need a total life overhaul to rescue your health. Sometimes you just need to live differently, for long enough that your body and your mind can finally feel the difference. For Mark, that number was 60 days. In the next part of this video, we're going to step right into day one of his 60-day journey, what he actually changed, how he replaces old habits, and the surprising thing that happened in just the first week of living like an Okinawan without ever leaving American soil. The latest science on Okinawa longevity in 2025. Is Okinawa still the one blue zone? When Mark decided to live like an Okinawan for 60 days, he wasn't just chasing some trendy idea he saw on TV. He's the kind of guy who likes to check the facts. So before changing his breakfast, before walking more, he asked himself a very reasonable question. Okay, but what does the science say about Okinawa now in 2025? Are they really still as amazing as all those books and documentaries from 20 years ago? If you've ever wondered the same thing, this is where we zoom out and look at the bigger picture. For much of the late 20th century, Okinawa really did sit at the top of Japan's life expectancy chart and became famous for having one of the highest concentrations of healthy, active elders on Earth. Those images of 90 and 100-year-olds gardening, cooking simple meals, and laughing together weren't staged, they reflected something real. But newer statistics reveal a more complicated story. Around the year 2000, Okinawa's lead in life expectancy started to slip. Male life expectancy, in particular, dropped from the very top, down into the middle of Japan's prefecture rankings. Researchers now point to a clear pattern. The oldest generations, those born before World War II, still live remarkably long, healthy lives. But many of the younger generations, who grew up surrounded by fast food, sugary drinks, and more sedentary lifestyles, are not doing nearly as well. So, is Okinawa still the one blue zone? Recent scientific reviews in 2025 still treat Okinawa as one of the classic blue zones, right alongside Sardinia in Italy and Nicoya in Costa Rica. But they make an important point. Blue Zone isn't a trophy or a world ranking. It's more like a living laboratory, where we can study patterns that help humans live longer and healthier. Instead of obsessing over who's number one, scientists now look closely at what makes these places special. Traditional Okinawan-style eating. Lots of vegetables, sweet potatoes, tofu, seaweed, beans. Very little sugar or red meat. Gentle, all-day movement. Gardening, walking, squatting, standing up and down instead of sitting all day. Strong social ties. Moai groups tight-knit circles of friends who show up for each other in good times and bad. A sense of purpose. Ikigai, that reason to get out of bed in the morning. Reviews of Blue Zone diets even suggest that these eating patterns may help lower chronic inflammation and support healthier aging at the cellular level, possibly even helping maintain telomere length, one of the biological markers linked with longevity. To make this less abstract, imagine two 90-year-old men. One lives in a small Okinawan village. He still eats mostly plants, walks to his garden every morning, and spends his afternoons chatting with lifelong friends over tea. The other lives in a big city, eats whatever is fast and convenient, rarely goes outside, and has almost no one to truly talk to. They're both 90 years old on paper, but the quality of their 90 years is completely different. Modern Blue Zone research isn't trying to turn Okinawa into a perfect myth. It's using Okinawa as a magnifying glass to help us see how dozens of tiny, ordinary choices add up over decades into something as big as how long and how well do you live. The small lesson here, and it's the same one Mark took from all this data, is simple. The important question is not, is Okinawa still ranked number one? The real question is, in my own life, am I living more like the older, traditional Okinawans? Simple food, strong friendships, natural movement, a clear sense of purpose, or more like the newer, westernized Okinawa, fast food, long sitting, little sleep, and constant stress? Because in the end, it's not the word Blue Zone on a map that shapes your future. It's the quiet, daily choices you make, in your kitchen, on your couch, and on the sidewalk outside your front door. In the next part of this video, we're going back to Mark to see which pieces of his Okinawan science he actually chose and how he turned them into concrete, simple steps on day one of his 60-day experiment, right in the middle of an ordinary American neighborhood. My exact 9 rules I followed, adapted for Americans over 50. After all the reading and documentaries about Okinawa, Mark realized something very simple. If I just feel inspired and don't change anything concrete, next week my life will look exactly the same. He needed more motivation. He needed clear rules, simple enough to remember, realistic enough to follow, for a 57-year-old man living in the United States. So one evening, he took a blank sheet of paper and wrote at the top, 9 rules for 57-year-old me living in America. Not 9 perfect rules from a health textbook. 9 rules that actually fit his needs, his schedule, his local grocery store, and the bills he still had to pay every month. Rule 1, start the day with a warm, savory, nourishing breakfast. Instead of donuts and sugary coffee, Mark switched to a simple, Okinawan-style bowl in the morning. Light broth, some vegetables, a bit of protein, tofu, fish, or chicken, and a small portion of rice or sweet potato. He told himself, breakfast should help me stand firmly on my own 2 legs, not make me crash by 10 a.m. Rule 2, never let his body stay glued to a chair for more than 1 hour. At 57, he didn't need a fancy gym. He needed movement often. So every hour, he stood up for just 2 to 3 minutes, walking around the house, stretching his back, rolling his shoulders, taking a quick lap down the hallway and back. He set a tiny reminder on his phone that simply said, stand up, move a little. Rule 3. At least 7,000 steps a day broken into small chunks. He knew that forcing himself to hit 10,000 steps all at once would only lead to quitting. So he broke it up. A few steps after breakfast, a few more after lunch, a longer walk in the evening when the air was cooler. His personal rule became, there are no zero-step days. Rule 4. Eat until he's about 80% full his own version of Hara Hachibiyu. Mark couldn't speak Japanese, but he loved the idea of stopping before he was stuffed. At dinner, instead of cleaning the plate out of habit, he practiced put his fork down a little earlier and asking, is my body already satisfied? Or is this just my mouth wanting more? Rule 5. Every meal must have at least one green or colorful plant. Mark made himself a promise. No more all brown meals. If he ate a sandwich, he added greens. If he had eggs, he added sautéed vegetables or fruit. He didn't try to become a perfect eater. He just refused to let a meal go by without something fresh and colorful on the plate. Rule 6. Build an American Moai. At least 2 friends he connects with regularly. Mark realized he was lonelier than he'd ever admitted, so he chose 2 people, a neighbor and an old friend. His rule was simple. Every week, at least 1 phone call, and if possible, 1 walk or coffee together. No big group, no forced small talk, just a couple people he could be honest with. Rule 7. Step outside every single day for at least 15 minutes. Rain, cold, or heat, Mark still try to go out. Standing on the porch, walking around the block, just looking at the sky, the trees, the other walkers. He called it his oxygen for the mind. A few minutes of light and air to remind himself he was still living, not just existing indoors. Rule 8. Turn off screens at least 1 hour before bed. Mark used to scroll on his phone until his eyes burned. Now he tried something different. A warm shower, some soft music, or a few pages from a real book. He didn't manage it perfectly every single night, but the nights he did, he woke up noticeably clearer and less heavy in the morning. Rule 9. Every morning, write down 1 small reason to get up. It didn't have to be profound. Some days he wrote, water the plants in the yard. Other days, call my granddaughter and ask about school. Or simply, take a 10-minute walk in the sun. These tiny reasons became his personal, down-to-earth version of Ikigai. Not a grand philosophy, just small things that made that day worth living. When he looked back at that sheet of paper with 9 handwritten rules, Mark realized something important. He didn't need to become an Okinawan. He just needed to become a slightly better version of himself, day after day after day. The lesson here is this. Health after 50 rarely comes from one big dramatic change. It comes from a handful of simple rules you can follow so often. They stop feeling like effort and start feeling like just the way I live now. In the next part of this video, we're going to walk through 1 full day in Mark's new life as he actually tries to live by these 9 rules. From that very first bowl of soup in the morning to his evening wind down and the exact moment he thought to himself, maybe I really can get stronger at this age.
You won't believe the turnout
Week
we
1
had
to
at the
2,
exhibition in Tokyo.
the
It
brutal
was packed
detox
every
phase
single
most
day.
videos don't show.
That is wonderful.
If you watch
news
enough
right here.
30-day transformation videos, you'll notice something funny. The hardest part at the beginning usually gets turned into a fast montage. Upbeat music, quick cuts, a few time-lapse shots, and then suddenly the person looks younger, fitter, glowing. But for Mark, the first 2 weeks were not a cute montage. They were a quiet, private fight inside a small suburban house. lived by a 57-year-old man who was tired of feeling tired. On day 2, Mark discovered a painful truth. He missed the smell of donuts more than he missed the thought of morning stretches. In the mornings, instead of pulling into his usual bakery, he drove home to that warm bowl of soup and a few pieces of sweet potato. In the afternoons, instead of grabbing a soda, he poured himself water or tea. Meanwhile, his brain kept whispering, "Come on, just one donut.
We are so
Just
lucky
one
to
can.
enjoy this time
It's not a
together.
big deal."
Indeed.
By
Cheers to your
day
health,
3,
everyone.
the headache
Bye-bye.
started. Not the kind that sends you to the ER, but that dull, nagging, "Where's my sugar? Where's my caffeine?" kind of ache. That first week felt like a negotiation between two versions of Mark. Old Mark, exhausted but comfortable, used to sweet snacks, long sitting, and late night TV. New Mark, awkward, a little clumsy, but trying to step outside, trying to eat more plants, trying to go to bed earlier. Some days he nailed it. Soup for breakfast, a short walk after lunch, an actual phone call with a friend instead of numbing out with his screen. Other nights, though, he found himself standing in front of the old snack cabinet, staring at a bag of chips. He laughed himself and muttered, half joking, half serious, "If I open this bag, my 60 days like an Okinawan story might be over right here." Instead of ripping it open, he made a cup of warm tea, sat down, and let himself feel grumpy. He didn't fake positivity. He didn't pretend this was easy. He simply admitted, "Yeah, this part sucks." In week 2, his body sent mixed messages. In the mornings, he still felt a bit sluggish. But around midday, he noticed something new. He wasn't crashing as hard after lunch. His mind felt a little clearer. On night 10, he woke up and realized something surprising. He had actually slept almost straight through, with far fewer toss and turn moments from back pain. The cravings didn't disappear. The soreness was still there, but between the discomforts, tiny signals started to show up. He wasn't gasping for air quite as much on the stairs. An old shirt felt just a bit looser, and every night he put a small check mark next to his 9 rules on that paper taped to the fridge. He felt a quiet kind of pride. One weekend afternoon, he went out for his usual walk and decided to FaceTime his daughter while he walked. She looked at him for a second and said, "Dad, you look better. It's only been 2 weeks." Mark didn't answer right away. He took a few more steps, slowed his breathing, and thought to himself, maybe what I'm really detoxing from isn't just sugar and bad habits. Maybe I'm detoxing from belief that at my age, it's already too late. The small lesson from those first 2 weeks is this: the hard, messy, uncomfortable phase, the cravings, the tiredness, the irritability, isn't proof that you're failing. It's proof that your body is learning a completely new way of being. If you've ever tried to change and found yourself thinking, "I want my old comfort back, this is too hard," remember, Mark was right there with you. But instead of demanding perfection from himself, he made one promise. Don't do these 9 rules perfectly. Just don't quit. In the next part of this video, we're going into weeks 3 and 4, the turning point when things quietly start to shift. Less pain, deeper sleep, and most importantly, that first real moment when Mark thinks, "Wow, maybe I can actually get better." In my late 50s, deep dive into the Okinawan plate. What I really ate every day plus 3 easy recipes for busy retirees. If you only know Okinawa from photos online, you see these gorgeous bowls full of bright vegetables, seaweed, and perfectly plated fish. Beautiful, yes, but for a 57-year-old man living near a regular American grocery store and a drive-thru on the corner, it can feel a little out of reach. Mark felt that too. He asked a very honest question. How do I eat like an Okinawan when I'm shopping at the same supermarket as everyone else? I'm not flying to Japan every week for special ingredients. So instead of trying to copy every detail, Mark focused on the structure of the plate first. Half the plate, vegetables and roots any kind he could find that wasn't drowned in oil. 1/4, a gentler starch sweet potato, brown rice, or a modest portion of white rice. 1/4, protein in reasonable amounts fish, tofu, eggs, or some lean meat, plus a small side, a light soup or a simple salad. From there, he built his meals, using what was actually available in an American store. What did Mark really eat on a normal day? Breakfast, a warm soup bowl made from low-sodium chicken or vegetable broth. A handful of frozen mixed veggies, carrots, peas, broccoli. A few cubes of tofu or shredded chicken. And some leftover sweet potato or a small scoop of rice. He liked to joke. This breakfast doesn't make me feel like I'm in a fancy Japanese restaurant, but it does stop my hands from shaking at 10 a.m. from a sugar crash. Lunch, his version of a longevity bowl. A base of brown or white rice, less than he used to eat. A scoop of beans, black beans or pinto beans from a can, rinsed. A generous pile of veggies quickly sautéed in a little olive oil. And any leftover fish or chicken from the night before. Dinner, a simple plate, a piece of baked or pan-seared salmon or white fish, a portion of roasted sweet potato, and a side of salad lettuce, tomato, cucumber, or finely chopped cabbage dressed lightly with vinegar and oil. Between meals, when he wanted a snack, instead of cookies or candy, he reached for fruit, apples, oranges, berries when they were on sale, or a small handful of nuts, almonds, or walnuts unsweetened. It sounds like a health magazine sometimes, but Mark always reminded himself and others, I'm still a normal American guy. There are still days when pizza happens. The difference now is this Okinawan-style plate is my default, and pizza is the exception, not the other way around. 3 ultra-simple recipes for busy or tired retirees. 1. Morning. Okinawan-style soup, supermarket version. Low-sodium chicken or veggie broth from a carton. A handful of frozen vegetables, any mix you like. Cubes of tofu or shredded leftover chicken. A few chunks of cooked sweet potato or rice from the night before. Heat everything together for 5 to 7 minutes. Season lightly with salt and pepper. And you've got a warm, savory, filling breakfast that doesn't spike your blood sugar and keeps you steady through the morning. 2. 10-minute longevity bowl for lunch. A portion of cooked rice, white or brown, from the fridge. Rinse canned beans, black, pin or whatever you like. Veggies. Anything you have, leafy greens, cabbage, or frozen mixed veggies. A bit of canned tuna in water or leftover chicken breast. Put rice at the bottom of the bowl. Add beans, veggies, and protein on top. Then drizzle a simple sauce. Olive oil, low-sodium soy sauce, and a squeeze of lemon. It's not perfectly traditional, but it's very much in the spirit of an Okinawan bowl. Colorful, fiber-rich, and not drowning in grease. 3. One-pan dinner for people who hate doing dishes. 1 large pan. Sweet potatoes cut into small cubes. Veggies, broccoli, bell peppers, onions, whatever's left in the fridge. Tofu or fish cut into chunks. Throw everything into the pan with a bit of oil. Cook until the sweet potato is tender. Season with salt, pepper, garlic, and add a splash of water or broth if it gets too dry. You end up with a full dinner. Veggies, protein, and starch in one pan. which is perfect for retirees who want to eat better, but have zero interest in washing a mountain of dishes. After a few weeks of eating this way, Mark realized something that sounds obvious, but is easy to forget. Healthy food doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be repeatable. The meals that reshaped his health weren't the perfect ones. They were the simple ones he could make again and again until they felt normal. The small lesson here is you don't have to turn your kitchen into a Japanese restaurant to learn from Okinawa. You just have to change your default plate from sugar heavy, oil heavy, white flour heavy to veggie heavy, bean heavy, real food heavy. In the next part of this video, we're going to move from the plate to the body. What actually changed in Mark's legs, his breathing, his sleep, and even his lab numbers after a few weeks of eating this way, and how those changes felt from the inside of a 57-year-old body. Movement the Okinawan way, from couch potato to 10,000 natural steps without gym. When Mark first heard 10,000 steps a day, his honest reaction was a long sigh. He was exactly the kind of guy whose step counter, if it could talk, would probably say, "Really? That's all I get today?" His old routine was familiar. Sit in the car to work, sit at a desk all day, sit in the car back home, then sit on the couch until bedtime. In his mind, exercise meant a crowded gym, loud treadmills, fit people sprinting next to him, and a 57-year-old man feeling completely out of place. But as he learned more about Okinawa, something surprising stood out. A lot of those long-lived elders never had a gym membership in their lives. They just moved. They walked to the market, tended their gardens, climbed a few steps here and there, bent down, stood up, carried things, and rarely stayed in one position for too long. So Mark asked a different question. How do I turn my everyday life into a kind of natural gym instead of forcing myself into a place I hate going? Week 1. From 2,000 steps to 4,000, built from tiny choices. On the first day, he wore a step counter. Mark was shocked. After a full work day and an evening at home, he'd barely hit a little over 2,000 steps. Instead of beating himself up, he treated that number as a starting line. He didn't aim for 10,000. He aimed for 4,000 in that first week. He began with very unglamorous moves. Parking farther from the store entrance, taking a 5 to 10 minute walk around the block after dinner, walking around the room whenever he made phone calls, carrying his own groceries into the house instead of asking for help. By the end of that week, his counter finally crossed 4,000 steps. No fireworks, no dramatic soundtrack, just a 57-year-old man, smiling quietly to himself in the kitchen. Weeks 2 to 3, 7,000 steps, not in one go, but spread across the day. Once his body got used to a little more walking, Mark nudged the goal up to 6,000 to 7,000 steps. He broke it into pieces. Morning, a 10 to 15 minute easy walk after breakfast. Midday, a few laps around the parking lot or neighborhood after lunch instead of sitting right down. Evening, another slow walk, sometimes while FaceTiming his daughter. On rainy days when he couldn't go outside, he'd laugh and say, "Okay, today the house is my mini Okinawa." He walked the hallway, went up and down the stairs a few times, and grabbed every excuse to not sink into the couch. Little signals started showing up. When he stood up from a chair, he didn't have to push off with his hands as much. When he carried grocery bags, his breathing didn't spike as fast. His knees still creaked, but after a few minutes of walking, they loosened up instead of locking up, hitting 10,000 steps As a side effect of a naturally active day, the first time Mark hit 10,000 steps, it wasn't because he marched in circles for an hour just to make the number. It was on a pretty ordinary, slightly busy day. He woke up a bit earlier and took a longer loop around the neighborhood. At lunch, he walked to a nearby store instead of driving. In the afternoon, he helped his neighbor move some boxes in the garage. In the evening, he still kept his usual 10 to 15-minute walk for better sleep. When he finally glanced down and saw over 10,000 steps, he didn't feel like an athlete. He felt like someone who was simply living differently. He realized that what made his routine Okinawan wasn't the step count itself, but the way he brought movement back into everyday life. Instead of letting his body be imprisoned by chairs and screens, the small lessons, natural, consistent movement beats intense, short-lived bursts. In the past, Mark had tried the all-in approach. Buy new shoes, go to the park, push himself hard for one big workout, and then be so sore for 3 days that he quit entirely. This time, he played a different game. No rumors, no drama. Just 500 to 1,000 more steps each week, so his body never felt attacked. The quiet truth he discovered is this: a small amount of movement, done consistently, beats a huge effort you abandon. That small was still powerful enough to change his breathing, his heart rate, and the confidence he felt every time he stood up and took a step. In the next part of this video, we're going to zoom in on leg strength and balance. After a few weeks of living the Okinawan way, American edition, how did Mark's ability to stand up, hold his balance, and his fear of falling, a fear many people over 50 secretly carry, actually begin to change inside his own body? Ikigai Moai, the emotional habits that healed my loneliness after retirement. By now, we've talked a lot about food and steps, but there was something pulling Mark down, even faster than high blood sugar and aching knees. Loneliness. Before retirement, Mark used a joke. One day, I'll retire and it'll be great. No meetings, no deadlines, no people to deal with. But a few months after he actually retired, he got used to quiet mornings in the kitchen, long days with only the TV talking, and evenings where no one called, and no one needed his signature on anything. No one was yelling at him, but no one really needed him either. When he started reading about Okinawa, 2 words stopped him in his tracks: Ikigai and Moai. Ikigai is your reason to get out of bed in the morning, not always some grand life purpose. Sometimes it's just caring for a plant, cooking for someone you love, or finishing a small task that matters to you. Moai is your close-knit group, a circle of people who walk through life together, sharing both the good days and the hard ones. Mark realized something uncomfortable. He'd change his food, he'd change his walking, but if he didn't change what was happening in his heart and relationships, his Okinawan experiment would always be missing a crucial piece, creating Mark's version of Ikigai, tiny reasons to get out of bed. As we mentioned earlier, Mark started a simple habit. Every morning, he wrote down one small reason to wake up, but now he did it with more intention. Some mornings he wrote, "Bake cookies and take some to my widowed neighbor." Another day, cut a few roses from the yard and bring them to the family across the street. Another, call my old friend who just had surgery and listen. Those little lines turned his mornings from just another day to get through into today I get to do this for someone. That's when he began to really understand Ikigai. It wasn't about a huge, heroic mission. It was about feeling useful, even in a small circle, even in simple ways. Building an American Moai, a three-person circle after age 57. Mark also knew a sticky note on the fridge wasn't enough. He needed people. He started with the ones closest to him. A widowed neighbor who often sat alone on his porch. An old friend who was also retired and always said he was busy, but was mostly busy watching TV. A younger neighbor who walked her dog past his house every evening. Mark didn't invite them to a Moai group. He just said things like, "How about a walk together every Tuesday? I'm making a big pot of soup this weekend, come over if you're free." The first time they sat together, it was a little awkward. Whether talk, old stories, a few polite jokes. But by week 2 and 3, the conversations dug deeper. The widowed neighbor opened up about the emptiness in the house after his wife died. The retired friend confessed he was terrified of falling and becoming a burden to his kids. The younger neighbor admitted she also felt lonely sometimes, even with a full schedule and all the social media in the world. Mark realized he wasn't the only one feeling alone. Everyone was just very good at saying, "I'm fine." From then on, those little walks stopped being exercise time and became check-in time. How did you sleep this week? Is your back any better? Did your daughter call? It all sounded simple. But those simple questions became an emotional umbrella, a quiet shelter where Mark no longer felt like he was aging by himself. When Ikigai and Moai start healing from the inside, one morning, Mark's daughter asked over the phone, "Dad, you seem happier lately. What changed?" He thought for a moment and said, "I am eating differently. I'm moving differently. But the biggest change might be that I'm no longer eating, walking, and living alone." He noticed his morning soup tasted better when he knew he was ladling an extra bowl for the neighbor next door. His evening walk felt lighter when someone was walking beside him, telling their own stories. On bad weather days or bad mood days, what kept him from giving up wasn't willpower or motivation videos. It was the simple thought, if I skip my walk tonight, my neighbor will have to walk alone. The lesson slowly came into focus. Emotional health isn't a bonus item at the bottom of your to-do list. It's the foundation that holds all your good habits together. As his loneliness softened, Mark noticed he didn't eat to fill the emptiness as much. With a small Moai around him, it was harder to slide back into. Whatever at my age why bother thinking. A small lesson for anyone over 50 who feels a little lost. If you're watching this and thinking, this all sounds great, but I don't have anyone to build a Moai with, here's exactly what Mark would tell you. A Moai doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. You can start with one old friend you haven't called in years. One neighbor you always see at the same time of day. One small group at church, a community center, or a local class. And one small note on your fridge that says, "What's my reason to get up tomorrow?" Just one reason each day. And one or two people you can be honest with can be the beginning of your own American-style Ikigai Moai. In the next part of this video, we're going to pull all these pieces together. The Okinawan-inspired plate, the natural movement, and these emotional habits. Ikigai and Moai, to see what actually changed in Mark's body and mind after the full 60 days. From the numbers on his lab results to the way he felt, looking himself in the mirror. Month 1 results. The changes my doctor couldn't believe. Energy, skin, joints, sleep. When Mark started his 60-day experiment, he told his daughter, "If after 1 month I feel nothing different, I'm stopping. I don't want to lie to myself." He wasn't looking for miracles. He just hoped for a few small wins. A little less fatigue, a little less pain, a little deeper sleep. But by the end of that first month, the changes were real enough that his doctor literally leaned back and raised an eyebrow. Energy, from barely surviving the day to I've still got a little more in me, before he changed anything around 3 or 4 p.m. Mark always hit what he called the wall. His eyelids got heavy. His head felt like it was filled with sand. And all he wanted was to collapse on the couch and disappear into the TV. By week 4 of eating Okinawan-style American edition, that wall started to thin. He still had tired days. But instead of a complete shutdown, he noticed he could stand up, walk around the house, drink a glass of water, and his brain would slowly come back online. One afternoon, his daughter stopped by and found him in the garage, sorting through old boxes. She laughed and said, "What are you doing? This is usually your nap on the couch." Mark grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. Apparently, the couch misses me more than I miss it. For the first time in years, he felt like he was using his energy, not just being dragged through the day by exhaustion. Skin, fewer gray tones, less puffiness, and the way you're using questions. Mark didn't start this journey because he was worried about wrinkles, but the body has its own way of reporting progress. Around week 3, he caught his reflection in the morning and noticed his face looked a little less gray, a little less dry. The puffiness around his eyes had calmed down. A neighbor saw him during an evening walk and joked, "Okay, what cream did you start using? You look brighter." Mark smiled. Mostly water and less sugar. Not very glamorous, but it works. That's when it hit him. Less sugar, less fried food, more plants, more sleep. Those choices weren't just changing numbers on a lab report. They were literally showing up on his face. Joints. The clicks didn't vanish, but the fear did. Before all this, every time Mark stood up from the chair, he braced himself. A sharp twinge in his knees. A little crackling noise and a quiet panic. What if one day I can't get up at all? After a month of gentle walking, breaking up his sitting, and cutting back on inflammatory foods, he noticed something subtle but huge. The knee noises hadn't completely disappeared, but the fear inside him, every time he stood up, was dramatically smaller. At his 1-month follow-up, his doctor asked, "Tell me how your knees really feel now." Mark answered slowly, "It's not that all the pain is gone, but it doesn't feel threatening anymore."
To health and
Before,
happiness.
every step felt like my body whispering, "You're getting old.
Honestly, this might be the
Be
best pizza
careful."
I've ever had.
Now each step feels more like, "Hey, I'm still here. I still work." The doctor nodded and said, "Some of that is probably from a little weight loss, more consistent movement, and less inflammation from food. But what I really like is that you trust your legs more. That's a big deal." Sleep. From waking 3 to 4 times a night to maybe just once. Before he changed, Mark's nights were broken into fragments. Up from back pain, up from stomach discomfort, up from random anxious thoughts. Around week 4, he noticed something incredibly simple and incredibly precious. Some nights, he woke up only once, and once or twice, he couldn't even remember waking at all. The next morning, brushing his teeth, he looked at himself in the mirror and thought, "So this is what real sleep feels like. Not passing out in front of the TV, but resting in a way that makes you feel alive in the morning." When they reviewed his blood pressure and blood sugar, his doctor said, "Nothing here is a crazy overnight transformation. But everything is shifting in the right direction. What surprises me most, though, is your face and your voice. You look and sound like someone who's been switched back on. Mark chuckled. Honestly, it's just less late night TV, less late night snacking, and enough walking that my body actually wants to sleep. The one thing his doctor couldn't measure, his sense of future. There was one change no test could capture. The way Mark saw his own future. Before, when he thought about the years ahead, all he pictured was more pills, more problems, less independence. After month 1, even though it was still early, different pictures started to form. What if I keep this up for 6 months? What if a year from now, I'm still walking 7,000 to 8,000 steps a day? What if 10 years from now, I can still do my own shopping, carry my own bags, and shower without help? No one can guarantee that. Life is still life. But for the first time in a long time, Mark felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt allowed to hope. The little lesson from this first month is, don't wait for your lab numbers to become perfect before you let yourself believe. You're improving. Some of the most important metrics are how many times you wake up at night, how many stairs you can climb without stopping, how often you look in the mirror and think, I look a little more alive today. In the next part of this video, we're going to step into full 60 days, the phase where these changes stop being just feelings and become solid, visible results. From weight and waistline to lab numbers to the most important thing of all, how Mark chooses to live the rest of his life after experiencing 60 days of Okinawan-style living without ever leaving American soil. Month 2 shocking results, blood work, weight, inflammation markers, and how I look 10 years younger. From the very beginning, Mark treated his 60-day experiment like a promise with an expiration date. Month 1 gave him hope. Month 2 gave him proof. By week 8, his doctor ordered a full panel. Blood sugar, cholesterol, inflammation markers, weight, blood pressure, the works. Mark walked into that appointment calm. If the results are good, I'll keep going.
These vegetables
if they're not, at least I'll know I truly tried.
I've been growing them
He
here
did
for
not
over
expect
70 years now.
that this would be the visit, where his longtime doctor would lean back and say, okay, seriously, what have you been doing these last 2 months? Weight and waistline, not dramatic TV numbers, but enough to change how he moves. Mark didn't drop 50 pounds. He didn't shrink overnight. But after 8 weeks, he was down about 12 to 13 pounds. And his waist was a few inches smaller, just enough that his old jeans weren't strangling his stomach anymore. And his belt had to move it a notch. The part that struck him wasn't the number itself. It was how it felt to bend down and tie his shoes. Before, he'd hold his breath, feel his belly pressing up, and his back would complain. Now, he still had to be careful, but he could stay down there longer, without needing to flop into a chair afterward. When the doctor read the weight and waist numbers, he said, this is exactly the kind of weight loss I like to see in someone over 50. Not extreme, not crash diet crazy, but enough that your joints, heart, and lungs get a real break. Blood work, blood sugar, cholesterol, inflammation, all trending the same way. If month 1 was his body whispering, month 2 was his lab work, speaking out loud. His fasting blood sugar had dropped out of the pre-diabetic danger zone. His LDL, the bad cholesterol, had come down a meaningful amount, while his HDL, the good cholesterol, had nudged up. Inflammation markers like CRP had moved downward, suggesting his body was a little less on fire on the inside. The doctor looked at the screen, looked at Mark, and asked again just to be sure, "Are you sure you didn't start any new medications?" Mark shook his head. No new meds, just different food, more walking earlier nights, and a little less grumbling about everything. The doctor smiled. "So basically, you did exactly what we always tell patients to do. You just actually followed through." Inflammation and how his body felt. From constant background noise to moments of real ease. Before all this, Mark described his body like this. "It's like there's always some kind of background ache. Not enough to send me to the hospital, but enough that I never feel truly comfortable." After 2 months, he noticed something new. His days now had real pockets of ease in them. In the morning, after a short walk, his knees and ankles felt smoother, less stiff. In the afternoon, if he ate a lighter lunch and walked a little afterward, his stomach didn't balloon up and his head didn't feel as heavy. In the evening, after a simple dinner, he didn't have that "I just want to lie down and not move" feeling. Not every day was perfect. He still had salty days, lazy days, days where his steps were lower. But when the doctor asked, "Overall, how does your body feel now?" Mark said, "It's like before there was this constant static, this noisy background hum of discomfort. Now, there are hours where the noise just goes quiet. I actually feel light for a while. You look 10 years younger. Not magic, but 1,000 small choices adding up." The 10 years younger comment didn't come from a lab result. It came from the cashier at his local grocery store. One evening, as he set his groceries on the counter, she glanced up and did a double take. "Okay, what's going on with you? New haircut? New skincare? You look younger." Mark laughed, running a hand to the same old silver hair. "Nope, mostly more walking, less junk food." She shook her head. "Whatever it is, keep doing it. You look like you dropped about 10 years of tiredness." That 10 years wasn't a scientific measurement. It was a reflection, a real-time mirror, from someone who'd been watching him for years. In his own mirror, he saw it too. Brighter eyes, less hunch in his shoulders, a walk that was more steady, less hesitant. He hadn't turned back into a 30-year-old, but he also wasn't a worn-out version of 57. He'd been 2 months earlier. He was a 57-year-old who clearly still had some road in front of him. The quiet lesson after 2 months. Your body always answers, you just have to stay long enough to hear it. Looking back over the full 60 days, Mark could see the pattern. Weeks 1 to 2, his body fought back, complaining, craving the old habits. Weeks 3 to 4, his body started to negotiate, sending small signs of improvement. Month 2, his body gave a clear answer in how he felt and in black and white numbers. His takeaway was simple. If you give your body 60 genuinely different days, it will give you a clear answer. Either, yes, keep going, this is working, or we need to just a few things. But you have to stay long enough to get past the phase where it screams for the old way. Not everyone will see the exact same changes Mark did. We all have different histories, genes, conditions. But one thing is nearly universal. Your body responds to what you eat, how much you move, how you sleep, and whether your heart feels connected or alone. In the next part of this video, we're going to turn the spotlight from Mark to you. If you're in your 50s or 60s and you'd like to try your own mini Okinawa experiment, we'll walk through a simple 7-day starter plan. What to eat, how much to move, What small habits to change so you don't shock your body, but you do give enough of a nudge to feel that first whispered change. That's right. I can still turn things around, even from where I am today. The biggest lessons at age 57 plus. Will I keep these habits forever? My honest advice for you, when day 60 finally ended, Mark didn't throw a big celebration. He didn't post, "My life has changed forever," on social media. He sat in his kitchen instead, staring at that worn-out piece of paper, with his 9 rules taped to the fridge, and asked himself a very honest question. The same one you might be asking right now. Am I really going to keep all of this for the rest of my life? At 57, Mark knew exactly how many new me attempts he'd started and abandoned before. This time, he wanted to be brutally honest with himself. Big lesson 1. Don't swear you'll do it forever. Commit to today and maybe tomorrow. In the early weeks, his thinking was very black and white. From now on, I'll never eat sugar again. From tomorrow on, I'll walk 10,000 steps. Every single day. And just like all the other times. One tired day, one party, one rainy week, and those forever promises shattered. Around the middle of his journey, he changed the way he talked to himself. Today, I'm going to have a warm, savory breakfast that's good for me. Tomorrow, I'll decide again. Today, I'm going to walk more than the old version of me would. Tomorrow, we'll see. He realized that after 50, what keeps you going isn't big dramatic vows. It's small commitments you can actually repeat. So when he thought about forever, he shrank it down. Forever equals a whole bunch of todays. Big lesson 2. You only need to protect a few pillars, not every single detail. When his daughter asked, "Dad, are you really going to stick to all 9 rules forever?" Mark laughed and said, "Probably not. But there are 3 I want to hold on to for as long as I possibly can." Those 3 pillars were the mostly vegetable, low-sugar, real food plate. The specific meals can change, but the frame stays. Half plants, a quarter better starch, a quarter reasonable protein. Some days it's soup, some days it's rice, some days it's a big salad. But he doesn't want to go back to all brown, all fried, all sugar plates. Daily natural movement. Not 10,000 steps every day, but also not 500 steps and a couch. On low energy days, he still tries to move a little more than he used to. Porch laps, hallway walks, another slow loop around the block. Ikigai Moai, small reasons to get up in a tiny circle of real people. Each morning, he still writes down one little reason to get up. Each week, he still aims for at least one real conversation or walk with someone in his tiny circle. The rest, perfect screen-free evenings, flawless bedtimes. Some days he nails it, some days he doesn't. But if those 3 pillars stay, everything else is easier to pull back in line. Big lesson 3. It's less about perfect habits and more about who you're becoming. Mark is very open about this. Yes, there are still pizza nights. Yes, there are still late TV nights. Yes, there are still cold, rainy days when he doesn't feel like walking. The difference now is not that he never slips. It's that he no longer treats one slip as the end of the story. Before, one bad meal would turn into a might as well give up week. Now, after an over-the-top dinner, he simply says, "Okay, next meal, back to the Okinawan style plate." He realized that the real win isn't becoming a perfect imitation of an Okinawan elder. It's becoming a 57-year-old
本当に
man
良かったです
who
ね。
actually protects his
選手のおかげです
future
ね。
self,
ありがとうございます。
even if he still has lazy days, craving days, off days. So will he keep these habits forever? If this were an inspirational commercial, Mark would
住み
say,
やすいです。
yes,
本当に。
from this day forward,
また来てください。
everything has changed. But his honest answer sounds more like this. No, I won't do all of this perfectly for the rest of my life. But there are some things I really don't want to lose again. He doesn't want to go back to collapsing on the couch
Your health and
every
happiness.
afternoon at 3 to 4 p.m., waking up 3 to 4
Honestly, this
times
might
a
be the best
night,
pizza I've ever
not
had.
knowing why, feeling a quiet fear every time he stepped down the stairs, and most of all, feeling like he was aging passively as a passenger in a car. He wasn't driving. For Mark, keeping these habits isn't about locking himself into a prison. It's about keeping his options open. The healthier he is, the less he hurts, the more choices he has for the years ahead. His honest advice to you, if you're over 50 and see yourself in his story, if you're watching this thinking, this all sounds great, but I'm just not that disciplined. Mark would probably smile and answer, trust me, I wasn't either. He wouldn't tell you to start with 60
よくそいで
days.
くださいましたが、
He'd tell you to
どうぞ
start
ね
with
上がって
7
おくつろぎ
days,
くださいね。
2 or 3 small changes, and a piece of paper. You put where you'll see it every day. For example, swap your sugary breakfast for a warm, savory, protein and veg breakfast. Add just 2,000 to 3,000 extra steps a day compared to your normal. Call one person this week that you can talk honestly with. You don't have to copy Mark's menu. You don't have to hit his exact step counts. All you need is your own tiny Okinawa version, one that fits your needs, your schedule, your budget, your culture, your family. What Mark really wants to pass on is this. At 57, I didn't need another voice yelling, you must be more disciplined. I needed a version of myself that would gently pull me forward. One meal, one walk, one phone call at a time. And maybe that's what you need too. Less judgment, more small, doable structure. In the final part of this video, we're going to turn all of this into a simple, concrete 7-day starter plan. What to eat on days 1 to 2, how much to move, how to adjust your evenings, what new habits to layer in on days 3 to 5 without overwhelming your body, and on days 6 to 7, how to check in with yourself, your energy, your sleep, your mood, so you can decide whether this mini Okinawa experiment is a path you want to keep walking step by step from exactly where you are now.